Chapter 45, That's Impossible. Inside his cave abode, Hunley slowly opened his eyes, withdrawing his spiritual sense from within his body, and there was a weary look on his face. After taking a moment to compose himself, he flipped a hand over to produce a blue cloud crane herb, which he placed into his mouth and began chewing as a contemplative look appeared on his face. Moments later, he exhaled before suddenly breaking the silence. "Fellow Taoist Mo Guang, I have some questions for you." As soon as his voice trailed off, the shadow that was cast onto the ground in front of him warped and elongated, following which a black-robed man with skin as dark as ink rose up from the shadow. The man cast his gaze toward Hunley in silence, and Hunley wasted no time, cutting straight to the chase. "Do you know of any secret technique that can seal one's nascent soul using chains that contain some type of power of laws? Does this have something to do with the seal on your nascent soul?" After the past 2 years of recuperation, Mo Guang had also made some strides in his recovery, but he was still rather mechanical in his way of speech. Hunley nodded in response, then gave Mo Guang a brief rundown of the state that his nascent soul was in. Mo Guang was silent for a moment before replying. "Judging from my past experience, in your current situation, you'll most likely have to recover your former magic power cultivation base, then rely on some secret technique to break the seal on your nascent soul. Unfortunately, due to the seal that's been placed on your nascent soul, it's impossible for you to cultivate and recover your cultivation base, so it seems to be a self-contradicting dilemma. I thought that would be the case. In fact, my situation is even worse than what you've just described. Even if I were to self-detonate my physical body and possess another body with my nascent soul, I still won't be able to free myself from this seal," Hunley said with tightly furrowed brows. "I recall you recently paid a visit to this sect's scripture library. Did you discover anything useful there?" Mo Guang asked. "I read through all of their scriptures, but there was nothing of use." Hunley sighed in a resigned manner. Mo Guang fell silent again for a moment before replying. "In that case, I can only imagine that there are no secret techniques in this realm of a sufficiently high caliber to provide a solution to your problem. You'll most likely have to find a way to return to the Immortal realm before you can pursue ways to remedy the issue." In a lush forest somewhere in the Immortal realm, the forest was countless ancient trees that were over 1,000 feet tall, some of which were vibrant and thriving, while others were withered and decrepit. There were also some that were of a purplish-red colour, presenting a peculiar sight to behold. Deep in the forest was an open area that was tens of thousands of feet in size. There weren't any tall trees in this area, only patches of shrubs, creating a stark contrast with the environment around it. However, at the very centre of this area was a strange ancient tree that extended all the way up into the clouds. The tree was entirely of a dark azure colour with a diameter in excess of 1,000 feet. The trunk of the tree was extremely straight with very few branches, and there wasn't a single leaf growing on the tree, giving it a bare, pillar-like appearance. What was even more interesting was that at some point above the tree, there were 7 or 8 branches growing diagonally out of the trunk, and these branches were supporting a massive grey bird's nest, looking much like an upside-down, tattered straw hat from afar. An incredibly massive bird was laying in the nest, whimpering quietly, seemingly in a great deal of pain. The bird's entire body was riddled with arrow-like feathers, and it had a disproportionately massive head, but a rather thin neck, and there was a huge pouch hanging near its chest, which was expanding and shrinking with each breath that it took. All of a sudden, the bird fully extended its neck as it raised its head up high, casting a wary gaze toward a certain direction, and the rate at which the pouch in front of its chest was expanding and shrinking sped up dramatically. The forest on the edge of the open area rustled violently in 3 different directions, and a humanoid figure leaped out from each direction before flying rapidly toward the giant nest. The 3 figures were all wearing tight-fitting black robes, and they leaped out into the open in perfect synchronicity, with even the degree of their movements completely identical. What was even more remarkable was that the 3 men were also identical in appearance. with all three bearing the same handsome and youthful male face. The three were rapidly closing in on the giant nest at an indescribable speed, leaving trails of after-images in the wake. All of a sudden, all three of them blurred before vanishing on the spot. The enormous bird was quite alarmed by this, and the pouch in front of its chest bulged slightly, following which it abruptly opened its beak toward the southeast to let loose a deafening cry. Incredibly powerful sound waves, interspersed with countless azure blades of wind, were sent sweeping toward the tall trees up ahead. The countless blades of wind formed an arc-shaped wall amid the sound of thunderous rumbling, and all of the shrubs in the wake of the wall of wind were uprooted before being torn to shreds, while all of the tall trees in the wall's path were also felled before being reduced to sawdust. The remnants of all of these plants were swept up by the wall of wind, becoming part of the wall as it continued to sweep through the dense forest without displaying any signs of slowing down. In the southeast, the two black-robed figures that had just disappeared suddenly re-emerged out of thin air before rapidly descending toward the ground. At the same time, azure light flashed from their bodies in unison, and they instantly became blurry and indistinct as they flashed through the air, constantly adjusting their speed in a calm and methodical manner to evade all of the oncoming blades of wind. The giant bird's thunderous roar continued to ring out, and countless more blades of wind were sent sweeping in all directions alongside devastating sound waves. However, the two figures were able to traverse casually through the blades of wind as if they were taking a stroll in the park, continuing to approach the giant bird as if there were nothing in their path. As the two figures drew closer and closer, the giant bird looked down at the nest beneath itself, then let loose a despairing wail. The fleshy pouch on its chest began to rapidly expand, becoming as large as the rest of its body in mere moments. And it was still continuing to expand. One of the black-robed young men was furious to see this. "You think you can self-detonate? Not on my watch." As soon as his voice trailed off, the third black-robed young man, who had been concealed this entire time, suddenly appeared in the air above the giant bird without any warning. He was wielding a long black blade, and with just a flick of his wrist, the blade instantly sliced through the bird's throat amid a flash of black light. A powerful burst of wind erupted out of the wound, carrying a vast volume of blue blood that erupted over 100 feet upward like a gory fountain. By the time the fountain of blue blood ran dry, the pouch on the giant bird's chest had also shrunk back down to its original size. Its head was laying limply in the massive nest, and its feathers were covered in its blood. Beneath it was a huge white egg that was tinged with traces of blue blood, and it was nestled against the giant bird's abdomen, looking very lonely and vulnerable. The three black-robed figures jumped down from the giant bird's head in an expressionless manner, then made their way over to its two wings and its tail. After rummaging through the bird's thick plumage for a while, each of them plucked out a glowing feather. Right at this moment, a flash of yellow light suddenly lit up from the waist of one of the black-robed figures, accompanied by a burst of urgent buzzing. The other two immediately arrived by the black-robed young man's side, and the three figures blurred before quickly fusing as one. Immediately thereafter, the black-robed young man pulled out a round communication plate from his waist, then injected his spiritual sense into it, upon which his brows suddenly furrowed tightly as he exclaimed, "That's impossible!" A vicious look appeared in his eyes as he spoke, and he quickly stowed the giant egg away before speeding off into the distance as a gust of fierce wind